a podcast hosted by Joe Dietrich, Joe on the mic, Leader Talk. All right, guys, we are on again today with Leader Talk, and we have an awesome special guest here. His name is Ben Courson, is a best-selling author, a TV radio personality, an international speaker, founder of Hope Generation, I love that name, and senior pastor at Applegate Christian Fellowship. He has been featured on Fox, Hallmark Channel, TBN, ABC Family, and other mainstream media outlets. His TV show is broadcast in 180 countries, and his national radio show airs over 400 stations. He travels the globe speaking on God's hope and igniting revival in the hearts of his leaders. And he's author of the new book, Flirting with Darkness. Ben, so awesome to have you here. It's just an awesome privilege to have you on. And can you give us a little backdrop on what inspired you or what motivated you to create this book, Flirting with Darkness?
Well, once every 40 seconds, someone around the world will commit suicide. There's 123 suicides per day, according to USA Today. In fact, in 2017, suicide was the second leading cause of death in my age group. There are twice as many suicides as murders. So the fact that it's this silent killer, and that's the thing I get asked more than almost anything is like, how do I overcome depression, or how do I get my kid to overcome depression? And so I'm like, you know what? And my dad actually gave me the idea because I gave a sermon about defeating depression, and my dad's like, you need to put this in a book. And so I actually did. And there's 11 weapons to defeat the dark lord of depression. So I can arm readers to the teeth with everything they need to win this battle.
Outstanding. And I love the way you put it, the dark lord of depression, because that's what it is. But for since this is Leader Talk, how can leaders support both families and individuals who struggle with depression or anxiety?
I think as a leader, knowing that some of the greatest leaders struggle with depression. So if we know that, then we're not going to stigmatize as weak those who are struggling with despair or depression. So Abraham Lincoln, our greatest presidential leader of all time, walked alone in the woods with a shotgun, tempted to kill himself. Winston Churchill, England's greatest prime minister during World War II, he also won a Nobel Prize for literature. He talked about the black dog of depression that would hunt him and stalk him. In fact, he didn't even want to be on a second-story flat because he said desperate thoughts do come in the head. Not that I'm suicidal, but you never know. So, I mean, even he dealt with that darkness, that black dog of depression. You look at somebody like Greg Louganis, the Olympic gold medalist, or Kurt Cobain, the lead singer of Nirvana, or Janet Jackson. You look at Buzz Aldrin, such an amazing leader that he was the second guy on the moon. He walked in space for 5 hours, 37 minutes. These were all people who struggled with depression. These were all people who struggled with depression. So I think just knowing that you're not weak because you deal with depression, as a leader, that will help us to actually find the gem within the darkness and say, like, if you struggle with depression, you might be burning in your own creative fire, and perhaps it's because you're a leader that you're struggling with this.
Wow. And it's true, because they take on a lot of responsibility, and they tend not to forgive themselves when they make mistakes. But I can go on to another topic about that, about forgiveness. But I was in the military. I'm a military veteran for 23 years. And I know in the military, when PTSD or depression comes up, they stay silent. Now, the question here is, what do you say to those who have resigned themselves to living with depression or even PTSD?
Well, I'm a big believer and advocate for something that I don't see a lot of people saying in my day, and that is that depression can be beaten. And I know that because I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD, over a decade of clinical depression and suicide ideation and all the rest. And this is what I found, like, you can beat it. And one of the things I do is I do Navy SEAL workouts with my friend Chad Williams. I haven't seen him in a hot minute here, but we were doing these great workouts, and he's SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 7. And now he's a speaker and author as well. He wrote a great book called Seal of God. And I got to connect you guys. You would love him, by the way. But basically, I think it's really interesting how the Navy SEALs practice something called cognitive restructuring, which is a basically psychological, neurological idea wherein if you're going through 96 hours of sleep deprivation during Hell Week, if you're suffering hypothermia in the Coronado Bay, during your training because you're doing water surf torture. If you're doing standing push-ups, or pardon me, standing up naps and, you know, moving push-ups, and it's just brutal all the time, or you're getting shot at, you say good times. That's what they teach you to say, good times. Now, why do you say good times? Because when you say good times, it actually, your brain starts to believe that you love doing miserable things. And so this is called cognitive restructuring. And it's actually a very ancient idea. You see in the Hebrew scriptures, in the book of Joel, it says, let the weak say, I am strong. So you might not feel strong, but when you say it, there's power there. So I'm a big believer in cognitive restructuring along with neuroplasticity. Daniel Amen, the psychiatrist who did 83,000 brain scans over a 22-year career, found, this is the greatest discovery he and his colleagues made, that the brain can change through rote and repetition by driving your thoughts toward hope over and over and over and over again. You can actually transform your cranial package. So I'm a big believer that depression can be beaten.
Amen. So do I. And just another question, because we're talking about leaders, and leaders sometimes need tools. And so what are the most valuable tools for someone to have as they go on the offense against depression and anxiety?
So one of the things that I write about is actually exercise. You'll notice that leaders are predisposed toward sort of physical fitness and, you know, rigor and this discipline. So like when you exercise, what happens is a 40-minute jog has the same effect on your brain as a strong antidepressant. You release endorphins, which activate opioid receptors in your brain, structurally similar to the drug morphine. So they're painkillers. So when you exercise, this is one of the things that releases basically joy hormones in your body. Another big thing as a leader to remember is to own your oddness. I believe our oddities are our commodities. Our strengths, our weaknesses are actually our strengths, and the curses become blessings. When we start to realize that we don't have to project an avatar to the world that isn't who we are, or sort of create this cognitive dissonance wherein I'm trying to be who I think the people want me to be rather than leading from a place of authenticity. And when I live from my own center, I'm not going to look to my neighbor for direction. So I think just like really being who God made you to be, that takes, as Ken Kesey said in One Flew Over This Cuckoo's Nest, the courage to be oneself is the greatest courage of all. It's just about the rarest thing going. It's one thing to say, oh, be yourself, and it sounds like fluffy unicorns or whatever, but when you actually do that, and you're willing to face the repercussions of being authentic to who God made you to be, it's scary for a lot of people. And so I think having the courage to own your oddness, you're going to find that will create and cultivate and contour and generate within you the greatest ability to lead.
Amen. I love that so much. And I like how you talk about being an optimistic, and how that's all ties in, going out in the world, doing your thing, seeing God's creation, enjoying life. And I'm going to take that up. So before we head out, because I know time is of the essence here, what is your message during these important times, especially during this pandemic era?
Well, nearly half of Americans are reporting that the coronavirus has harmed their mental health. And so now more than ever, we need hope dealers. I think there's two extremes. One is like, oh, I'm just a 4 on the Enneagram. I'm learning to live with depression because it's like it's like the culturally acceptable thing to do. Then on the other hand, you have people who just stigmatize depression and say you're weak if you struggle with depression, which simply isn't true, as I've shown through a few of these examples of these greats who struggle with depression. So what we need are people who neither stigmatize it nor live with it, but fight it to defeat it. So I'm a big fan of this idea that, speaking of Navy SEALs, this is pretty cool, but there's a study that was done by, reported by Time Magazine, wherein Martin Paulus did this study, wherein he found that Navy SEALs, when they are given a color cue during a study that indicates they're about to see an emotional picture, they're able to adjust their emotions on the fly and they don't get glued to that emotion. So they're able to nimbly jump from one emotion to the next without getting overly fixated on this emotional picture. Whereas the normal civilian will be so emotional about it that he or she can't move on. And so I asked my Navy SEAL friend Chad, I'm like, so do you struggle with like PTSD after war? He's like, no. And I thought that was amazing because he's been through more hardship than most people will ever go through. And he was just like, no. And I thought that was really interesting. I think like if we take on a warrior mindset and we're like, you know what, I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to be victorious. Yes, I'm thankful for compassion and I need empathy. But more than that, what I need is discipline. I don't need people's pity. I need power. And when you start going after that power, man, you're going to be a victorious warrior in this battle if you can jump nimbly from one emotion to the next. And through neuroplasticity, we can actually practice that.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Guys, I hope you're taking notes. Re-listen to this podcast one more time because there is some value in what Ben was just bringing. He was bringing some gold. And you know, it's true. We got to fight this silent enemy. We got to lock arm in arm, just like the Navy SEALs do when they're during a training on the beach. They're locked arm in arm, together, fighting together to last that week. And can you imagine if we lock arms together with a buddy that we know might be going through some stuff, and just lock arms with him, not necessarily judge him, not necessarily say anything, but lock arms and rock with him, saying we're going to get through this together. How much awesome, better place this would be. Man.
Can I say two things about that before we wrap up? Because you just brought something to mind. In the Coronado Bay, when they're linking arms, not to be crude here, but the SEALs will hope that their buddy next to them goes to the bathroom in the water with them because they're so cold. So even their buddy's mess proves to them to be a benefit. And I've never thought of it in this way before, but that's how relationships are. They're messy, but they honestly do help you against the cold. And the second thing I'll say is, in the scriptures, Paul said, take up the shield of faith. And in the Roman military, their shields were constructed in such a way that they could interlock with the shields of their brothers to their right and their left, and they could march upon the enemy like a solid wall. So it's not just a solitary thing, it's a solidarity thing. And so I'm so glad I got to be a part of this podcast and link arms with you, and we're going to continue to march on the enemy and beat this silent killer.
Yes. Thank you so much. And Ben, where can they find your book and reach out to you?
bencourson.com. That has all my information. So it's just bencourson.com. You'll find it all there.
Outstanding. And we're going to have it in the caption. And when we publish this episode, Ben, thank you again. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your victories and sharing hope with the next generation. And I'm so glad to have you on. And guys,
such an honor. And I hope we get to do it again sometime soon.
Me too. I'm so excited about it. Guys, all right. Check him out. Go to his website and see you on the next episode.